I used to think that people were just naturally born with business acumen. You know what I mean? Like the people who they could navigate office politics. And I would be standing in the corner going like, I don't get it. You know, there's water cooler talk in the office, and I would insert myself kind of awkwardly into weird conversations, or I would laugh just a little bit too loudly, right? Or I would come up with, oh, this is a funny story that no one would really laugh at all, and I just kind of slink away into the background. Awkward, right? I used to think that, salespeople were just born that way. They were just made salespeople, and that's how it is. They're born with the gift of gab. They could somehow effectively communicate, and they just had that ability. They came out of the womb that way, right? But I've learned to manage my emotions. I've learned to manage my state of mind. And this has improved how I communicate, and therefore it's improved the quality of my personal and my professional relationships. And most of us, we're not taught how to manage our emotions in healthy ways. Now, for example, I spent my early childhood growing up in a one-room shack on a farm in the middle of nowhere, no plumbing, and the winters were so cold and so drafty, we'd wear like all of our clothes and tons of blankets just to stay warm, And so my parents, they worked really hard, mostly just to survive. So I wasn't really given those tools for emotional intelligence, right? I had to figure this stuff out on my own. I had to learn how to communicate effectively and interpersonal skills on my own, and sharing what I've learned is really what lights me up these days. And while my case might be extreme, most of us were not taught emotional intelligence skills as children. But the good news is that emotional intelligence can be cultivated. It can be learned. It's not like our regular intelligence, our intelligence quotient, our IQ, we're born with that. Our EQ, our emotional quotient, we can develop those skills. And, I know this because I'm living proof, right? I never, ever in a million years thought I would be an international speaker, a TED Talk speaker, a trainer, a digital advertising consultant, certainly never on stage talking to people about it. But, I've learned how to manage my state of mind, and it's been able to help me improve in my personal relationships and in my career. Today, for the first half of my talk, I'm going to share with you an overview of emotional intelligence. And I'm going to break down some of the 26 traits of emotional intelligence. And then at the very end, I'm going to give you 5 tips that I've used that everybody can walk out of here today and start using and practicing to get better results in your life. My name is Christina Aldan. I am a TEDx speaker, a trainer. I own a digital advertising agency based in Las Vegas, Sin City. And my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I want to say thanks so much to Build Stuff. It's my first time here in Vilnius. It's a beautiful city. So yeah, this used to be me. I don't get it, right? I'd be left standing there at the water cooler going, what just happened? I feel kind of weird. I don't know. I don't think I rocked that conversation at all, right? And my emotions were kind of out of control. Fear and anxiety is really what kind of drove most of my reactions. And, I was just in this fight or flight mode all the time. And maybe some of you are looking for different results too. I have reduced stress, I have better relationships, and, I get better results from my teams as well. And I wasn't born with this business acumen or a natural ability to have difficult conversations. I had to work at it. And to be honest, sometimes I still have to work at it. I still have those awkward conversations. Like I have this thing where I'll do like a panic stream of consciousness introductions, kind of awkward sometimes. But whatever. We're all a work in progress. Does anybody want to guess how many emotions that we feel a day? An average human. How many emotions do you think an average human feels a day? 5. Who else? 5. 15. Yeah, 100. 465. 465 times the average human is going up and down and all around and in and out through all of those emotions, and we got to process them in healthy ways. 465 times a day. Our emotions influence every single decision in our life. We're always moving toward pleasure or away from pain. So if we can learn how to leverage our intelligence, our experiences, our emotions, all of that we've gathered up through the years, we can learn how to leverage that. We can help improve our chances for success. So cultivating emotional intelligence is tough work, because there are all these different facets and layers to consider. And there's really no perfect path to developing emotional intelligence. But here's the thing, it's tough out there, right? It's a jungle out there. And I get it, it's an unfair world. Sometimes we might feel like we're surrounded by chaos. Sometimes our business life, our personal life might just be in complete disarray, right? Lots of us, they're facing daily challenges. Maybe you have a sick parent at home you're caretaking. Maybe, like me, you've struggled with chronic pain for half your life. That's a thing. But maybe you have a special needs child at home, but you're still expected to show up, aren't you? You're still expected to produce. You still got to come to the office. You still have to present yourself professionally. You still have to manage your emotions and communicate effectively to get things done, whether you feel like it or not, unfortunately, right? The world still turns with or without us managing our emotions. I mean, we still have to get up, we have to get dressed, we still have to produce. That's what we're there to do, is to do a job. And so few of us are taught how to manage our emotions. And we don't really have the emotional support that we need at work either, right? If we look at the data, research shows that 60 to 80% of all difficulties in organizations, they stem from strained relationships. And lots of times, bosses, they don't address these issues. So, from the employee perspective, the data tell us that they'll feel discouraged. They feel taken advantage of. They dislike their work. They don't follow policies and procedures, right? Morale starts to go. And employee theft will increase. Negative attitudes, irritability, employee turnover increases. All of these things can be really expensive for an organization. And the reality is, 2 to 4 days, 1 to 2 days a week, every week, is what managers are spending to manage conflict, and they really don't want to, because even though they're spending 25 to 40% of their time managing conflict, most of them would rather that employees figure it out on their own. We've heard this before, right? We're all adults here. You go figure it out. We're all adults here. They'd rather you figure it out, and they put it back on you. And it's expensive. It can be 150% more if you want to let go of an employee and replace an employee. So it's really better to teach these skills to people to manage conflict resolution and to help people manage their emotions better. Now, it's important to note that I'm not talking about fake it till you make it. I'm not talking about fake it till you make it here. Fake it till you make it, there's a time and place for that, but I'm not talking about disconnecting from your emotions completely. I can fake it till you make it for about 2 to 3 months. There's a reason why when you hire on to a new company, people give you 90 days, right? That's about how long it takes for the crazy to come out. And for me, I just like to let my crazy hang all out right at the beginning. What you see is what you get, And I think that it's important to understand yourself and the people around you, because then you can have a clearer picture about how you fit into the community, what you can contribute, and then how others might support you best. But here's the thing, this is how it feels sometimes, right? That alarm goes off in the morning, and some of us are so stressed at work, we're thinking, not another day. I don't want to go in today. I don't want to see my partner, my boss, my cubicle mate, whoever, that project, the client. There's so much stress, right? And if you're already feeling stressed and you're trying to fake it till you make it, guess what? It adds more stress. And maybe that 90 days of your crazy coming out shortens down to 20 days. So numerous studies are going to tell you, and you can look up the data, numerous studies tell us that chronic stress leads to severe health issues later in life. And there have been times when I personally have had crippling panic attacks at work, on the job, and you kind of have to figure it out and pull it together. So, even though stress is unavoidable, we can learn how to respond to stress instead of reacting to every little thing. We can learn how to respond in a responsible way. I think this is going to be a 2-bottle talk. We used to think that the brain was much more limited than it actually is. So our brains have this quality called neuroplasticity. Who's heard of neuroplasticity before? Neuroplasticity. Tell me what neuroplasticity is. Welcome to the big stage. Neuroplasticity, yes. Neuroplasticity is our way of our brain making new neural pathways. Essentially, you can teach an old dog new tricks. Have you heard that saying before? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Wrong. You heard it here. I'm here to tell you, Christina Aldan told you, build stuff Lithuania. You can teach an old dog new tricks because our brains have this beautiful quality called neuroplasticity. And so what that means is that if the stimulus is strong enough, or if the stimulus is repetitive enough, we can create new neural pathways in our brain. And essentially, the more we stimulate that neural pathway over and over and over again, and we stop feeding the other ones, they kind of, essentially, they stop getting, they kind of get old and tired, and you don't see them, right? So new neural pathways, that's what we want to do. We want to wire our brain to respond instead of reacting in fight or flight mode all the time. So, if we stimulate new parts of our brain over and over again, we strengthen that neural pathway. So then it makes sense that, just a 1-hour talk at a tech conference suddenly isn't going to make you an expert in emotional intelligence, right? Reading a book over a weekend is not just going to suddenly make you an expert in emotional intelligence. You have to practice this stuff. It's a little messy sometimes, it's a little awkward, but I'm used to being awkward, so it's okay. I just go for it. But with constant practice, your mindset, it changes over time. You rewire your brain. You change those new neural pathways. Using myself and as an example, does everyone know what a hairpin is? Those little metal hairpins. Our 110 volt outlets look a little different than yours. But those hairpins are just perfect size in the US for those sockets. And there's me crawling around my grandmother's house as a baby, and I picked up a little hairpin, right into that socket. How many times in my life do you think I stimulated that neural pathway? That's right, once. One time. That's all I needed. And I haven't stimulated that neural pathway again. The stimulus is strong enough, or if the stimulus is repetitive enough, we can rewire our brain. And if it's strong enough, we can change our mindset. We can change on a dime, just like that. Thank you, neuroplasticity. Here's the issue, though. Here's the main problem. Our lizard brain, that amygdala. We actually have 2 amygdalae. They kind of work in concert together. So we'll just talk about it as one. Amygdala. The amygdala is in our limbic system, our limbic brain. And unfortunately, we're at a biological and physiological disadvantage because that's what gets the signal first. Everything, as soon as the stimulus comes in, goes right to our amygdala, that limbic brain, before it is wired up to our prefrontal cortex. So, the key to success is learning how to identify what our triggers are so that we can respond. Responsible people respond. And so, while our intelligence quotient, our IQ, is fixed at birth, our emotional intelligence, our EQ, it's not. We can practice these things. We can stimulate those neural pathways to get better results. And having these two parts, the logic part and the feeling part, working in concert together, that's kind of what emotional intelligence is. Those two parts of your brain communicating together. And the reality is, stress sucks. While stress is a really good indicator, it's a really good motivator sometimes, right? Oh gosh, I got to get that report. All right, look, it's due tomorrow. I'm going to have to pull a late night tonight. Even though stress is kind of sucks, it is a good motivator. However, if it's repeated and it's ongoing and it's long term, it leads to a lot of health issues. And I think in technology, we could use a little bit more self-care. I think we could use a little bit more rest and taking care of our brains to avoid those emotional, those psychological, those physical problems. Think about it. If you're stressing out at work, that's 50 to 60 hours a week that you're freaking out. If you work at home or if you bring it home, that's even longer. That's even more. That's a lot of stress on your nervous system. And I hear it over and over again. I've talked to hiring managers, I've talked to a lot of recruiters and done interviews, and every single time they say, given a technologist who has the same skills, somebody who has the same skills, or even if this one has a little bit lower technical skills, they will always choose the one with the higher EQ every time. Every time. Because the research says that those workers with higher EQ, they're better able to work in teams, they can adapt to change, they can manage stress, and they're more flexible. Remember, your management, your leaders, they don't want to deal with conflict. They are already dealing with a lot of conflict, and they don't want to deal with any more of that. So, it's important for us to develop these skills on our own. So instead of arguing or getting defensive or trying to convince somebody of your position, you might use techniques to communicate better instead. And this varies from culture to culture. Nuance is important. Semantics are important. Tone, voice. I lived in Southern California, and I don't know if anybody's been to Southern California before. There is an Armenian population in the city of Glendale, and gosh, my favorite coffee shop. I still haven't found coffee this good. Like, just thinking about it right now, you ever had coffee that good? And this coffee shop, I used to go and hang out, and I'd pull out my little laptop and work on websites and hanging out, sitting there, sipping my coffee. And one day, I was in the coffee shop, and these two guys were sitting there talking to each other, and they were really kind of getting into it, right? Really getting into it. They were very animated, and I thought, oh man, they're about to throw down, right? I picked up my laptop, and I kind of moved over to the other side. I sat down, I'm drinking my coffee, I'm doing my work, and I look over, and they're still kind of going at it. And then I realized that's just how they communicate, right? They're just culturally very expressive, loud. Oh no, they're very, very physical when they speak and they communicate. And so all of these things are important when we're learning how to communicate with other people. They vary from culture to culture. And the history of this, it goes back to Darwin, 1872. He wrote The Expression of Emotions in Man and Animals. And then Daniel Goleman, 1995, he wrote the book, coined the term emotional intelligence. Emotional Intelligence 2.0 is a book that I recommend to everybody. It's very simple, and it gives you actionable strategies on how to improve very specific parts of emotional intelligence. So you break it down in those 26 traits, and you can work on one thing for a few months, focus on another trait for a few months, practice, practice, practice. So what is emotional intelligence? It's the ability to monitor one's own and other people's emotions, to discriminate between different emotions and label them appropriately, and to use emotional information to guide thinking and behavior. It reflects your abilities to join intelligence, empathy, and emotions, to thought and understanding of interpersonal dynamics. So really what that means is, do you get it? And if not, then how can you? Right? Emotional intelligence includes more than just your intelligence. It's your intuition. And so there are 4 different parts: awareness of self, awareness of others, management of self, management of others. 4 different categories. And we can break these 4 categories into 26 different facets. And I'm not going to go over all of those today, but we can cover a few of them here. And then we're going to talk about my 5 tips. So, when we break these into 26 influencing factors, I guess I don't know how many, maybe half of them today, maybe less than that. But I'm teaching a master class on Sunday on the 17th. If anybody wants to sign up, there are still tickets available on the Build Stuff website. And we're going to really dig into how emotional intelligence affects user experience in that workshop. So let's talk about awareness of self. Awareness of self is really the first step of emotional intelligence. It's the first thing because, it's hard to look in the mirror. It's really hard to look in the mirror. I can't understand what you're feeling, unless I first understand how I'm feeling. So looking in the mirror is that first step, which is hard because, I'm really great at looking at other people and seeing how they can improve. Is anybody else really, really good at looking at other people and be like, oh, no, girl, not those shoes. Oh, no, you know what you need to do. Let me tell you about your man, right? We have all of this great advice for other people and how they should live their lives, but it's hard to look in the mirror and turn the lens inward and be honest about, the challenges that we're dealing with. It's easy to look at other people and analyze them and to judge. It's a good distraction. But when we know our own emotions, when we have an accurate assessment, then we can understand others better. So emotional self-awareness is one of the 26 traits of emotional intelligence. It's the ability to detect and decipher emotions in faces, pictures, voices, and how to identify your own emotions. And it's good also, we can use these emotions as a barometer. You can think about where your challenges lie. If you're not sure where your challenges lie, take a moment and look at what you're avoiding in your life. Whatever you're avoiding is probably where you should be leaning in to do a little bit more work and introspective work on yourself. And, look around at how you're spending lots and lots and lots of your time. Because we tend to do what's easy. We tend to gravitate toward pleasure or away from pain. So if something is a little painful to deal with, we're going to avoid it. For me, I've learned to kind of dig in and roll up my sleeves whenever a challenge kind of comes in. All right, let's get into it. Let's see what happens. Let's break it down. Let's see where the patterns are. Oh, I can't believe I did that, right? That kind of attitude and that kind of behavior and being able to look at yourself in an honest way, that self-reflection is important. And we can take self-assessments to do this. And I take a lot of self-assessments. Historically, I've been really bad at self-assessments. And so, they tell us a little bit more about our tendencies, our patterns, and they give us insight into any kind of confirmation bias that we have. But I really want to let you know that assessments are good to a point, right? They're good to a point. We've all met that person before who has taken the Myers-Briggs test. Oh, I'm an ENJKP. I'm a QSTR. Or the person who says, oh, I'm such a Pisces. That's just how I am, right? These people use assessments to keep themselves in a box. And that's really not what assessments are for. So if I take assessments, I like to apply them to a situation, a scenario for where I am at this current picture in my life. They are not prescriptive. Assessments are descriptive. They're not prescriptive. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're taking those kinds of assessments, because they're not there to build up walls and limit yourself and keep yourself in a box. The next thing I want to talk about is management of self. Management of self, another one of those 4 quadrants of emotional intelligence. And so my coach, Mark Rowland, He says we all have 4 superpowers. 4 superpowers, 2 internal and 2 external. Our 2 internal superpowers are our thoughts and our emotions. We all have control. Unless you're born with a debilitating disease, we all have control over our thoughts and emotions. All of us do that. And our 2 external superpowers are words and our actions. We all have control over our words and our actions. Talk to my 2 young children at home. Why did you hit your sister? I don't know. My body told me to do it. Who manages your body? My brain. Who manages your brain? You do. We all have 4 superpowers. And with great power comes great responsibility, right? Use them wisely. And so how do you manage yourself? How are you managing your own behaviors? Think about that. With integrity is another facet of emotional intelligence, falls into this category. Integrity is what we do when no one is watching. And integrity was one of the first things that I started working on before I even knew what emotional intelligence was. Integrity is what we do when no one else is watching. And awareness of others. This is another category of emotional intelligence. And when we think about awareness of others' emotions, there's a lot incorporated into this. There's a lot incorporated into awareness of others. So, various studies, they'll tell us that only 7% of communication comes from our words. That seems like a lot to me, but that means that 93% is based on your voice and your body. So what signals are you communicating, right? What would have happened if I came up here and I went, "Hi, I'm Christina. We're talking about emotional intelligence today. Thanks for coming." Right? It's an exciting talk. Not so much. What are you communicating with your body? Is your heart up? Is it open? Is your voice using intonation? Is it up? Is it down? What about your pitch? What about your volume? What about the closeness of the space that you're using? Obviously, I'm a very kinesthetic person because I walk around and I wave my hands. Give me some room, right? Pay attention to your body language. What is it communicating? What's somebody else communicating to you? You can improve rapport with somebody, for example, by mirroring their body language, mirroring their movements, because then they feel like you're on the same page. Mirroring is a good way to create more rapport with people. And watching your cadence, your pitch, your intonation of your voice. Emotions will be expressed whether you want them or not. So if you're nervous or if you're asking for a promotion, just gotta kind of be mindful of those signals that you're giving off. And if you're in tough negotiations, you really got to train yourself to present yourself, to speak in a way that's going to bring you the optimum success. Empathy is something that I talk about a lot. Empathy is something that I think our world needs more of right now. And empathy is a little bit different than sympathy. Empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy can sometimes divide us. Sympathy, sometimes you want to fix somebody or put a silver lining around it or give them platitudes. That can sometimes be separating. Empathy, however, empathy connects us. Empathy says, I'm sorry you're going through this right now. I don't know what to say. You don't have to go through this alone, though. I'm just going to pull up a chair and sit here with you, right? Sympathy says, oh, yeah, sorry, that sucks. Listen, call me if you need anything, and then you never answer your phone. Right? Sympathy is more to make you feel better. Empathy is to sit with the other person and their emotions to help them in whatever that need is at the moment, without trying to fix it, without trying to silver lining it. Empathy is walking a mile in somebody else's moccasins. Sympathy is being sorry that their feet hurt. And if we think about how empathy is defined, it's that feeling that you understand and share another person's experiences and emotions. It's the ability to share someone else's feelings, essentially. The social and situational awareness, I put this picture up here because, it's a really good indication. If you're at the celebration, if you're at the party, the conference, and you're talking to somebody and you think you're really rocking out the conversation, take a look at your feet. If that person's feet are pointed toward you, then there's a good chance that they're listening. But if you think you're just going on and you're really orating and you look down and their feet are pointed towards the door, then it's time for you to, right? Most people, they maintain eye contact. We know this for about 30 to 60% of the time. So, I'm not saying sit there and go, hey, do the whole stare down while you're talking to somebody. But 30 to 60% of the time, you want to try to make sure that you're giving that person eye contact so they know that you have that awareness and you're listening and you're paying attention. You're kind of nodding, right? Giving those verbal cues, those physical cues. Your service orientation as well is another part of this, how you give back to the community. Management of others, building your tribe. This is what my TED Talk was about, how we're connecting with people in any given moment. Building our tribe, our awareness of self, awareness of others strengthens our personal and professional relationships when we can build our tribe. How are you contributing to the community? How are you giving your talents and your skills back into the community? Every single person has something to give. And so how are you sharing that in the community? It's a part of emotional intelligence. And being able to understand how people communicate is important. For some people, communication's like this. I used to have a team lead, a director who, it was like they were talking at you. It wasn't somebody that you talked to or interacted with. He was somebody, you walk into the room, he was somebody that you dealt with. You know what I mean? Everybody, I think, has probably encountered a person like that, where their communication, they're trying to convince somebody or being pushy, right? But really the only way to change someone's mind is to connect with them through the heart. The only way to change someone's mind is to connect with them through the heart. So again, we must have empathy when we're communicating with others. Powerful influencing skills. This is how we motivate people. And you don't have to be a team lead or a manager or an executive to motivate people or to be a leader. You can lead from within. I'm a big proponent of leading from within. And my trainer, Peter Pinto, he always reminds us that we're never not motivated. We're always motivated for something, to do something. We might be motivated to, put off those edits, put off that blog post. We might be motivated to go play some video games. We might be motivated to go have dinner but we're always motivated, always. So think about that when you're sitting around going, oh, they're just not motivated. I don't know how that can get that team member. Well, they are motivated. And so understanding everybody's individual motivations, just because they might not be the same as yours, it's up to the team lead to figure out what those individual motivations are. Some people are there just for the paycheck. That's fine. That's okay. If that's what their motivations are, then you can motivate them through bonuses or whatever. If they're motivated for some altruistic need, okay, great. Make sure that you find meaningfulness and purpose in their work to motivate them. And all of these things can help you influence people and motivate them to a common goal. Mentoring and coaching others is another part of emotional intelligence. At any given time, I'm usually mentoring about 7 or 8 people from all around the world and in different parts of their career. Maybe they're a startup that just got funded. Maybe they're a startup that didn't get funded and they need help. different kinds of mentoring and coaching. They have programs out there, even in tech, that you can, or nonprofits where you can go and volunteer and give some of your time to teach a class to kids or whoever, right? Mentoring and coaching others is another aspect of emotional intelligence. And your teamwork and collaboration, your ability to work in teams. Remember, I said hiring managers, recruiters, these are the things that they look for. These are the qualities that they look for. And while we can't cover all of them today, if you just work on a few of these, pick one thing even. Pick one thing, work on it for 3 months, and then watch what happens. It's very interesting because you'll start to get results, and then results are addictive. And then you go back and like, oh, what did Christina say? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? Until you get through all 26 traits of emotional intelligence. It's great. So let's talk about 5 tips. I want to talk about some things that have worked for me that I've helped build and cultivate more emotional intelligence in my life. So, does anybody know what this is? Refrigerator, cooler. These are pretty much in every single restaurant anywhere in the world. Pretty much. They all have these big walk-in coolers. The cool part about walk-in coolers, I don't know if you know this or not. I don't know if maybe you do, maybe you don't, but they are completely, perfectly insulated. And so in my younger days, I had a lot of server jobs. I worked in a lot of restaurants. And my first tip for cultivating more emotional intelligence is to create space, to pause. Because on a busy, crazy Friday night where I served that steak the second time and it was still wrong and the kitchen got it wrong and the manager's not backing me and the customer's really, really angry, the best place for me in that moment is the walk-in cooler because I can go in there, slam the door, and scream and not bother anybody. In fact, I did this talk at Microsoft in Texas, and somebody raised their hand. They said, oh, yeah, we just called that the office. We had a chair in ours. That's what we did. But creating space around that emotional, whatever that is. For me, I'll go take a walk. Maybe it means you pause, you breathe, inhale, exhale for 6 breaths. Maybe you listen to death metal. I have a friend who, he sits there just all day long coding, and you think, gosh, he must be just rock. He's so peaceful. I hope you're productive today. How's it going? And he pulls off his headphones, and I'm like, whoa. How do you do that? He's like, oh, it just gets me real relaxed. I get in the zone. I'm like, oh, dude. Okay. Maybe it's something like a gulp of water, glass of water. Pause. Take a moment, right? Just take a break, whatever your challenges are, think about it. Are you communicating responsibly? Are you communicating effectively? We still have to show up, even if you're stressed, even if you're in pain, even if you had a fight with your significant other this morning, whatever, you still have to show up. So, find a way to vent, find a way to pause and create space around it. In fact, there is a company out there called Whitespace, and this is what they do. This is what they do. So, they say that there are different things that you can actually measure in an organization for their productivity. This is interesting to me. This is interesting to me. Now, remember, I'm not talking about fake it till you make it. I'm talking about processing your emotions in a healthy way. Maybe it might not be the right time. That's okay too. You got to wait, hold it in, suck it up, and then you can go vent at the appropriate time. Get a vent buddy. Whitespace tells us that you should look for signs of pushing. If you're pushing, we're driven toward a goal, okay, but it can be easy to kick it into overdrive. We see this in technology all the time, right? People are working on the weekends, people are working without pay, people are just pushing. If you notice that a lot, there's probably some ways that you can work in Whitespace into your life. The next one is perfection. Perfection is tough because it prevents us from delivering. Sometimes what happens is the product never gets shipped because that last 2% we never get out the door because all the I's are not dotted, T's are not crossed, and there are idealistic unrealistic expectations. So perfection is another thing that we can look at to think about where more white space is needed in our working environment. The other thing that we can encounter is analysis paralysis. I call it analysis paralysis. We get so much data or so many things. We just want to make sure, just one more thing. Let me check just one more thing. And then we never launch because we're analyzing over and over and over, and we're just holding up the project. The other thing is busyness. So busyness is about checking boxes. Who likes to write lists in here? Yeah, where are all my list writers? Yeah, Sometimes I put stuff on my list and cross it off just because, like, oh, look, I did laundry. Okay, I'm gonna put that on the list just so I can cross it off the list, right? Lists are fun, but we have to be cautious. Are we just being busy just to be busy? Or are we actually effectively using our time? If we're not, then there's an opportunity there to increase more white space in our lives. Because otherwise, the big stuff starts to back up because we're doing all these tiny little checklists here, just to get that instant gratification of feeling productive. My second tip is shifting your perspective. Now, shifting your perspective is an exercise that really helps us take a step back and try to understand from the other person's perspective, right? The emotionally intelligent person, they can capitalize on this and understand that those 465 changing moods every day, we can leverage those if we shift our perspective, think about how the other person is feeling, think about our position. This especially works in conflict management as well and conflict resolution. So we can learn to harness our emotions and to facilitate different ways for creative thinking and problem solving just by shifting our perspective. We have time to do this today, so I want everybody to close your eyes. Let's do this little exercise in shifting our perspective. I'm going to show you how that you can do this in any situation, in any kind of situation, if you just close your eyes. Here we go. Nope, your eyes aren't closed. I see you. It's like you think I can't see you. I can see all of you. Okay, ready? So I want you to sit in your chairs. Let's take a deep breath. And I want you to feel the weight of your bottom in the seat. Think about the temperature. You're hearing me, you're seeing me flailing around. Keep your eyes closed. Still talking. I'm really excited to be here in Vilnius. I'm chatting, looking all you, and you can see me up here on the stage. You can see the screens behind me, and you really understand what it's like from the first person perspective. Now we're going to take a deep breath together. And I want you to shift your perspective to me. Think about what it's like to be me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to share what I've learned. We're here in the room. It is kind of cooler for me because I'm used to Las Vegas weather, but this is great. I'm pacing, I'm on the stage, I can see out everybody looking out. Close your eyes back there. And you can imagine what it's like to be me, to feel excited. Some of you even smiling. You get it. I'm energized. I'm really happy to be here. And then we're going to take another deep breath. And I want you to zoom out of the room as if you're watching it on TV. Now for me, this is one of those old time dial TVs. But zoom out as if you're watching it on TV, and you can see me talking to you. You can see everybody with their eyes closed, and you can see the dynamic between the audience, the cameraman's in the back. You can understand how the room's flowing, the conversation, right? We're going to take another deep breath together. And I want you to come back to your own perspective and open your eyes. Now, this is a really great exercise if we're just hanging out in a conference room and we're enjoying each other and we're talking and about something about, emotional intelligence. It's not so easy when your 16-year-old is standing there making you crazy and it's hard for you to understand their perspective, right? But with practice, if you can objectively look at a situation, look at a scenario, almost as if you're watching it on TV. It helps you understand where the other person's coming from. That's where that empathy comes in. You can look at the body language and see what they're communicating to each other. You can think about your part in the conversation. And here's the thing about that. We have all these cognitive biases. Somebody put this together recently. There are 188, as it turns out, inherent cognitive biases. It's incredible. And so, through these confirmation biases, we form, we reconfirm stereotypes. We're looking for information and data that are going to validate our beliefs already. So it's important to shift your perspective to see it from another perspective. And, here are some questions. If you want to take a screenshot of these, my slides will be able to. But here's some questions to avoid that bias, to avoid confirmation bias when we're building products, when we're building services, when we are thinking about programs for our employees, right? So how to avoid confirmation bias. My little TV. We already did that. The other thing that we can do is we can get curious. We could get real curious to gain more awareness of others. We can practice being a better listener and asking questions with follow-up questions instead of just yes or no questions. Instead of that awkward water cooler talk, we can get a little bit deeper into what somebody means when we're talking to them. And so even if you don't like talking about yourself, you can ask redirecting questions away from yourself. You can point the attention away from yourself. So here are some open-ended questions, and I will put these up again. I'll put my slides up so you can have all these. But having these kinds of follow-up questions instead of just a yes or no question is important. And then redirecting questions, how you can kind of divert the attention away from yourself if you're nervous or if you're kind of an introvert. You can ask all these redirecting questions when you're talking to people, and that kind of helps take off the stress a little bit. And it can be really helpful if we understand that other people get awkward too. It's not just us, but those redirecting questions can really help. The fourth thing that I want to suggest for my tips are to make a list, to gather what you have accomplished this year, to think about what you would like to accomplish next year, to stop and just kind of take stock. A lot of us don't do that. We're go, 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 go. We keep going to the next thing, next thing, next thing. We never stop and celebrate our accomplishments. We don't stop and assess what talents that we're bringing to our community, how we're imparting our skills into the community. So make a list and consider that. Take the time to really understand that. The last thing is to be engagey. How you relate to your community. And so for me, Meetup has been really great. User groups have been really, really great to find like-minded people who are like-minded in ways that I want to work on certain projects in the community with, or that I want to learn from, podcasting group, or even, just curiosity things. Maybe there's something I've always wanted to learn, but I never really got around to it. You can ask those curiosity questions and get a little more engaged in people and in topics that are interesting to you. There's Dr. Thomas Chamorro Premusic. He studies science and technology, and he helps to determine and predict human performance. And one thing that he always says is that it's one thing to be charismatic, but if we take that to the extreme, people might get self-focused, they might get obsessed about getting ahead, and in order to be an effective leader, It's really important to kind of conduct ourselves with integrity and have these emotional intelligence skills that we're working on when we're communicating with other people. And instead of trying to trample people on their way up the corporate ladder. And I'll leave you with one more thing about engaging. You know, even if you're a shy person or if you're an introvert, there are still ways that you can connect and that you can engage. You can write for large publications, you can engage on Twitter, you can join LinkedIn groups, right? You can help the tech community by helping emerging authors maybe, or giving them reviews. All of these are ways to engage, even if you're an introvert and even if you don't like to put yourself out there a whole bunch. So what, you know? What does this do? All of these things have helped me reduce my stress. They've helped me improve my relationships and to get better results for my team. So I hope that everybody here tries one or two of these things. I want to hear from you if you do. I did have a artwork, a poster of this talk that was live drawn. If you want to get a copy of it, it's pretty cool online, where there was an artist live drawing my talk, and all of the points that I made today are in that poster, so you can check that out. And if there are any questions, I can take those now, either through the app or wherever. Does anybody have questions? Somebody has a question. The previous slide, oh, he turned them off. Can we turn them back on? Oh yeah, okay, thank you. No? Yep. All right. This one? This one? Forward. URL. Got it. Excellent. And I hope to see you at my mastermind. If anybody wants to dig into this stuff a little bit more, I love that. I also have an online class coming up, so if you want to check that out, let me know. Thank you very much.